Hi everyone, welcome to my 10-page flip through. These are the 10 pages that put me over to across the 200 line. So it seems funny that maybe I've only written 206 days in a row because I swear I've been doing this for much longer, but I think I just took days off to like finish my dissertation and stuff, or defend my dissertation. So I've kind of lost sight of some of the prompts already, and you know what? I don't care. These prompts have been sometimes more directed toward like not writing, but more like drawing, and so then I just have to like do my own thing. But I love Creative Sprints, the book, and I definitely would recommend it, but I'm not going to talk so much about that today. And I have been putting more pictures in my journal, so I feel like maybe that's where more of my inspiration is coming from. Like this day is this person sitting in a tub full of flowers, and I started writing about being in a tub, and then also this idea of like being alone with yourself, and then weirdly, like if God could be alone with himself, and if that's like a thing. And then I'm writing more about how a lot of Christianity is tied up with basically fertility and like creating a family in the way that like you have children and they inherit your property, and yeah, just a lot of things I feel like in Christianity are based much more on that than this idea of like this loving equality community that maybe like love your neighbor sounds like. Anyway, so yeah, I wrote about that a little bit. Then the next day I wrote about omens, partly because I've been taking apart this bird nest book. And those birds just kept building a nest in my old house, and I didn't really want to see it as an omen, but I think the human mind just sort of wants to like seek patterns and signs, especially maybe me. So yeah, I wrote about omens, which I don't want to believe in, because if there's like good omens, there's bad omens, and I already feel sort of like born under an unlucky star or something, so I try not to engage with that too much, but I did that day. And then this day, really, this pink was already from the original journal. Like the pages are just different colors, so this day happened to be pink. I dug up some like pink stamps. I cut out this chair, this little bird that has a pink crown on it from some cutesy stuff I found at Tuesday mornings actually. And I did a little bit of writing in friendship first, okay, like 3 words, and then I got pretty quickly into writing about car parts, which then led to writing about the Jonathan and David story that I'm working on, which, if you haven't been following along, is sort of this love affair. I don't really want to call it a love affair. Why did I just call it a love affair? This relationship between these 2 cyborg people, although I think one is like maybe seen more as a cyborg than the other, or is like a cyborg born a human and then becomes part robot. What do you call it when a robot becomes more human? Is that still a cyborg? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so maybe some good stuff in this one. I feel like part of the machinery of the cyborgs is that they can put different natural materials in there, like here lichen and also some tea leaves, and that can actually function as like a lubricant for their machinery, like oil. Who knows? Okay. And then the next day I found this quote from Charles Dickens. Who knew? He said, in Hunted Down, apparently someone says, "A very little key will open a very heavy door." And I wanted to write about that because I do feel sort of like that I'm like scrambling to find some kind of key to unlock some sort of like unknown door or something, because life is just so crazy these days. But instead I sort of wanted to let go of that and sort of like stole a quote from The Matrix: do not try to find the key, instead try to realize there is no key. No key, no lock. And then I wrote about a traffic circle, which weirdly is kind of, now that I think of it, a sort of hangover from when I was writing about this, these cars. It's kind of from this French card game. I can't remember what it's called. And it's gonna come to me in a minute. I think it has the word like 1,000 in it or something. And it's like a game where you go down the highway and you have like speed limits and Born. It's fun, play it. It's like a card game, but you're driving cars, but there's no cars, just cards. Anyway, I was writing about that, and then I kind of like got toward the end here, and I was like, oh, we're all traveling with and without her, and I didn't really know like what to put there, and I put unicorns, and so yeah, it says without her unicorn, and then I got very excited about unicorns, and I went into my sticker book and found this picture of a unicorn, and I've actually been like thinking about unicorns because I'm working on this altered book for Kendra, and it's called The Unicorn by Iris Murdoch, and as I've decided to read it instead of just tearing it apart. And so like as I'm reading it, at first I was like, oh, I'm not gonna read it, and I cut out the title pages and made this see-through thing. I don't know what's gonna happen with the see-through thing. I want to put like layers here that do something. I also kind of want to leave it somewhat open so that Kendra, if she wants, can like put her own stuff in there. And then I just gessoed these first few pages, but then I definitely decided I was going to cut some out so that I can fill it back up with other pages, and then I'm going to put some other types of paper in between these ripped pieces. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting. This is a really fun, I don't know if it's fun, this is a really interesting way to read a book where I'll like read a page and decide if I'm gonna like keep it, cut it out, or rip it out. And so basically like, you know, you're reading all these pages and then the pages are gone. So like, yeah, here, you know, I've gone quite a few pages, you can tell, where I've just basically cut them all out. And I'm on page 144, I guess, out of 287. It's kind of fragile. I probably need to like not, I'm even like pressing it down now. Maybe I need to not do that, but I might have to figure out some way to strengthen it. But if you haven't heard of Iris Murdoch, I don't think you have to read like her whole novels to get some stuff out of what she does. I think she was like an early feminist, I guess, for lack of better words, and she was married, but she also had, I think, a relationship with at least one other woman. I think she was like do your homework, Matt. I think she was like a dancer or something. And there's letters that they wrote back and forth between each other. And Murdoch was like a philosopher and a really smart person, and wrote a lot about gender. Oh, and so the unicorn, I think, in The Unicorn, this book is not like, doesn't seem like it's about Christianity or religion really at all. And it's kind of a crazy book where this woman is trapped in a house. Her husband is sort of like, she got caught cheating, and now her husband's like making her stay in this house, and he doesn't even live there. He lives there in New York. And I think is like, he was super abusive, and like he is having these relationships with men, and but she is like committed to staying in the house. And I think the unicorn is Jesus. And I haven't finished the book. I hope I'm not giving anything away if you're gonna read this book. But like one of the older guys in the book explains that this unicorn that's like keeping her, that she's like in love with or something, is Jesus. So anyway, it's an interesting book. Check it out. And unicorns ended up being in this poem. The next day, I was going through an old fairy tale book, and I found this one about, it's called The Girl Without Hands. And so I wrote a thing, it's like an allegory, I guess, about being a boy without hands. And this was like pretty, I felt good when I was writing it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of like my story. Although now I don't really know what's going to happen with it, and also who cares? That's not really the point of this journal. It is kind of fun to think about like what might happen. Anyway, she meets this rich, she cuts her hands off because her dad made a deal with the devil. Speaking of like familial bonds. And which like none of that was like her fault. Her dad like made this deal with the devil and she just got caught up with it and she had to cut her hands off. And but later she meets this king, and the king makes her some silver hands. The devil is very tricky though, and things don't go that great for her. Anyway, I think in the end it actually does work out. So yeah, I wrote about that, and it ends up that she doesn't need the silver hands. So that to me was like, oh, you can see it ends here, like for sale, silver hands, beautiful, but no longer needed. That like ending is way too like sentimental to me, but I really like that idea. It's just the beautiful but no longer needed. That's almost like redundant. For sale, silver hands. I think that's where it ends. Oh, there you go. Also, remember I cut a hole in my journal? It's really starting to bother me, and I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon again, but it's kind of fun to put these obstacles in your way, and then you have to like creatively get around them, and that's definitely a way I think that you can build on your creativity. This day I went back to this nest idea. This nest has been cut out of this picture, and this is what remains. And hexagons are kind of like nests, and I cut out hexagon scraps all the time to put in my journal, and I was doing a lot more of that back at the beginning here. Maybe actually, you know, that was like in a whole nother journal. I haven't really done, there's one. I just really like this idea of like cutting out these hexagons. And I wrote about mama birds again. Whatever. The next day I found this poem. I'm trying to clean out some of my poetry books, so I want to like rip the poems out that I like and give the rest away. Or maybe I'll type them up, but it's just easier to rip them out and glue them into a notebook. And I feel like people are just obsessed with purity and whatever purity means. I love this. It's almost like a haiku, and it's kind of about, I think it's about bees. As countless swarm the wisteria, despite frost on the walls, hunting nectar, lost. A stray cluster confusing the air, the pale sun, your blonde hair, everywhere white. Yeah, like purity, white, boring, but yeah, I wrote about some bees and bodies, and this idea of washing and snow. It's kind of a New England-y poem. Who knows what's happening with that? Anyway, I think this prompt on this day had something to do with water. Maybe I just made that up because this picture from an old porn mag says shower on it. And I remember one of my engineer friends in Utah saying to me, like, everything is made of water, Matt. And I was like, what? That's not, like, rocks have water? And he's like, yeah, rocks have water. So yeah, it's true. Everything on Earth pretty much has water. Oh, I know what the prompt was. The prompt was that humans are made of more than 50% water, which at first seems like really special, and that is like a lot of water, but everything on Earth is made of water, so we're not like that special about it. Also, I weirdly wrote about how there's kind of like, that made me feel like uneducated, and you know, I'm the first in my family to graduate high school, and I just feel uneducated. Like, I feel like I didn't grow up learning like what a lot of my colleagues did. Like, my parents didn't talk to me about, you know, Charles Dickens or something. And so I feel like super uneducated at times, or I like identify as uneducated, and that's obviously now especially not the case. Like, you know, I think I wrote that, like, you definitely I could still be dumb and ignorant, but I'm not uneducated. I have, you know, several advanced, 2 terminal degrees, 2 advanced degrees, like a PhD. I'm not uneducated. And yet it doesn't always feel that way. I wrote this little thing on queer time, and I'm excited to push forward on that. I have so many projects in the works that some of them are like harder to work on than others. And I've also just found it hard to work lately. Just sort of feeling like this pandemic pressure on my shoulders. But I think I made some progress in separating my idea of queer time from this idea of this like no future, that queer time means like we're, as queer individuals, we're like already dead and there's no hope for the future for us. I hate that that's called like dark side, and I wouldn't like, or how people like might call that the dark side. And I want to move away from calling things like dark or light, even though it is, I guess, like in one sense of the word, like a dark future if we're all, you know, doomed to die. Also, I don't think it really has to be like a binary, so I've been thinking about like a plane or a map. Somewhere I drew a plane or a map. Where did that end up? I have no idea. Well, that's interesting. Fast forward this part, everyone. Yesterday was Sunday, and I didn't really write much at all. I just wanted to drink mimosas, and I wanted to do some Mormon mommy blogger, let's make art stuff. I didn't get to do that. I might, like, quote, give myself the day off on the weekends and not write on those days, and then I would write every weekday, and then that would even it out so that every 2 weeks I'm making one of these videos. But like, it doesn't feel like work to do these. I want to do them every day, although obviously like on this day I didn't really want to, but also something could happen out of this, so yeah. And then today I was super inspired by this picture of this kid with wine goblets on his ears. He's like in the background, he was like at some sort of wedding or something. And I definitely remember doing this when I was a kid, and the sound of like all of the hubbub and noise, like, and then your own breathing. I tried to write a little bit about that experience. Things have been turning like so allegorical, and I don't, you know, like, I think there's a difference between like poetry and allegory, and poems that like verge on allegory aren't as exciting to me, I guess. Partly because like I'll turn anything into allegory, like give me anything, and you know, I want to find the symbolism there. But I ended up writing a little bit about the symbolism of like being in this own little, like a world of your own, Like here, I feel like he's almost like he's the photographer saying something to him, and he gets to say like, oh, or he doesn't have to say anything. He's just sort of like can ignore him because maybe he can't hear him because of the glasses on his ears. And so this idea of just sort of like the privilege of like being in your own little bubble, and how do people like relate to you there. Wow, okay, that's just like a little morality lesson or something for you. Not a poem at all, but that's all right, because maybe I'll type it up, maybe it will become a poem, maybe it won't. Anyway, I will see you at the end of 10 more pages. That may be in 10 days, that may be in 14 days. I don't really know.